Perhaps the question is, why is it now moving the capital? I mean, it's been an agenda of Indonesia going right back to at least the mid-ish 50s to move the capital away from Jakarta and ideally to Kalimantan. So it's been an on-again, off-again discourse for 60 years. But President Joko Widodo has decided to get fully behind it, enthusiastically, and has pushed it away further than anybody dared try before. So I think the reasons for it are quite numerous. So one, of course, we're all quite familiar with the congestion of Jakarta. So to be able to decentralize national life to a number of other places beyond Jakarta is a good thing. Secondly, there's a sense that Indonesia is a lot more than the island of Java. And so there's always been a bit of a sense of spreading the country to have a capital that reflects all parts of the nation and not really building into an area that's grounded into one, even though, of course, Jakarta isn't Javanese ethnically, but it's still seen as being closely associated with that broader region. And so it fits also into an idea of decentralizing development opportunities across the country away from the central island and the heavy industry and development, which is very much concentrated in this part of the island of Java anyway. So it suits a number of important national objectives. So it's fair to note that global warming is not going to be kind to Jakarta. The city has got a very broken down water table for many years, so the land is sinking, certainly in the northern half of the city, and has been for a long time. And then as sea levels actually rise, I mean, much of the city will be seriously threatened in the not too distant future. In the area where they're moving in Kalimantan is a few dozen meters above sea level, so it should be safe unless every single glacier has melted on the planet. The other element, of course, is people have, as they want and criticizing, they hear Kalimantan, they think more destruction and more deforestation. The area where the capital city is to be located isn't virgin forest. It was long denuded decades ago. And most of the trees there are basically foreign imports, actually mostly acacia trees, because they were being grown because they grow quickly for the pulp and paper industry. So in many respects, there is actually an opportunity for a bit of rehabilitation of some of that area that will be included in the new capital territory. So there are two broad land classifications there. The first is, and think of it as a bit like the Australian Capital Territory. So within the ACT, you've got the overall region, and then you've got Canberra City as one part within that whole area. So within this new special territory of Nusantara, the city itself will be about a quarter to a third of that land area, and the rest will be either protected or kept as water retaining areas or serve other purposes, but they won't be for heavy population. I suspect it'll take a very long time. But what they will do is, I mean, it's going to be a challenge because there are still people who don't agree with this move. So the first thing, that they will move core components of government. So the office of the presidency, the parliament, the Supreme Court. So those core constitutional institutions of the nation will be the first to move, together with a couple of strategic ministries. I suspect parts of, not necessarily the complete component, but parts of the Ministry of Home Affairs, Foreign Affairs, Defence, probably Finance. They will be lead agencies that will be moved first. I'm suspecting they're arguing they want something there on the ground by the first half of 2024, which for those who track the political calendar is also the same time that the next presidential and parliamentary elections take place. So I suspect someone's looking for some ribbon cutting opportunities, but it also puts a deadline to actually get things going rather than an open-ended, oh, we can do it in a couple of years, oh, there's been some delays, we can move it back again. So putting a sort of a drop-dead deadline, which was actually included in the law itself, provides an impetus so people know that there's an end state by which things have been constructed. So the rest of the administrative apparatus will piece by piece transition, and that will obviously include representations from diplomatic services and so forth, and international organizations that will also with time need to relocate closer to Nusantara. Look, it's mixed. I mean, obviously some people are interested, are intrigued. Some are quite excited. Some buy into the notion that we need to decentralize development opportunities to a broader swathes of the country and to involve broader swathes of the country into the political mainstream, as it were. But there's certainly a lot of people who probably are more comfortable in the leafier suburbs of Jakarta and the big shopping centres and all of the facilities that go with being in a mega city, rather than moving to a bush capital, which is exactly, I have actually heard Indonesians refer to it as a bush capital. So I think that's probably people who've studied in Australia and are familiar with that term. So I'm not hearing jungle capital, but I do occasionally hear people refer to it as the bush capital. So I guess for the same reason that there were probably quite a few people resident in Melbourne in the first couple of decades of Australian history who weren't that enthusiastic or ambitious for all parts of the central government or the federal government to move to Canberra. So similar sorts of dynamics, I suspect. Actually, there are quite a few examples. And I think there are two groups of relocations. The first relocation is what you might call satellite relocation. So that would be something like we saw in Kuala Lumpur, where the official administration moved a few kilometers to the edge of Kuala Lumpur and set up like a satellite city close to Kuala Lumpur. The second is a greenfields investment, which would be like Canberra or like Brasilia or like Abuja in Nigeria. Now, under those occasions, you move the capital to a long way away. Both have advantages and disadvantages. So the idea of the satellite city has the advantage that you're leveraging off a lot of existing infrastructure. So it's a bit easier to get things done when you're really only having to transport all that's required, 20, 30 kilometers away. And you probably also get a bit less resistance from those people who don't want to move a long way away from where they've established families and lives in the old capital city. The second one, the greenfields investment, does have advantage in that you're moving it a long way, and it provides for that decentralization of economic development, new opportunities, a capacity, as it were, to start afresh in building the capital city as the embodiment of all of the nation, rather than necessarily, particularly in a very plural society, but will obviously be, the capital city will obviously be much more infused with the culture and history of the communities that existed there previously. So it does allow a kind of a fresh start in building a new capital that identifies with the cultures of all parts of the country. Now, actually what Indonesia is doing in situating it not where it had always traditionally been considered, somewhere in central Kalimantan, but in East Kalimantan, it actually combines a little bit of both. Because yes, it's a greenfields investment, that's for sure, and it's certainly a long way from the existing capital, but it is located relatively closely to two reasonably big cities. So Balikpapan, which is a very well developed port city, it's kind of an old oil city, but it's got very good, strong logistics from much of the mining, construction and infrastructure development that's been taking place for decades. And Samarinda, which is a slightly larger city and is the capital of East Kalimantan province. So in some respects, they'll be creating a triangle relationship. But unlike those other greenfields kind of cities, they do have a capacity to leverage existing skills of people, logistics and supply chains and other important features that are required in order to get going on a major national construction program. So the Nusantara program actually combines a little bit of the advantages of both of those models for new capital cities. This is actually going to be interesting. So one of the groups that are going to challenge There will be appeals going to the Constitutional Court regarding the constitutionality of this, not necessarily challenging the idea of moving the capital, but actually challenging it on the basis of a perceived lack of public involvement, consultation, deliberation involving the community, the nation, in creating this law. Now, this was a challenge that was successful with the very important omnibus law on work creation, which was announced by the Constitutional Court a couple of months ago. Ostensibly, they weren't necessarily taking issue with the substance or arguing that the law itself was in contravention of the Constitution. What they're focusing on is that the way the law has been put through actually violates critical principles of democratic process, which are supposed to inform the way the legislative operations take place. So I guess one of those questions is, where did the name Nusantara pop up? There was no referendum, there was no great public consultations going on or anything like that. But the term itself does have deep resonance within the archipelago. In fact, the term Nusantara itself, if you didn't call this country Indonesia, you would actually be calling it Nusantara. Nusantara literally means the archipelago in between. And so when they refer to Nusantara, they refer it to being as Indonesia, which is an archipelago between the continents of Australia and Asia. So it's a very old, goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, that notion of a Nusantara. So in some respects, it's certainly not a new term, and it doesn't reflect on any individual. So it's not like calling it, Jokowi City or something like that. It actually does have deep gravitas and resonance within Indonesia's long historic national narrative. So that's where it comes from. Well, Jakarta will continue to be the center of commerce and business in the country. It will certainly, for many, many years, continue to be a sort of a core center for things like health and other kind of sophisticated services. It'll continue to be the home for the stock exchange and the capital market. So that's not going to dissipate anytime soon. Similarly, when the capital from Australia moved from Melbourne to Canberra, Canberra never emerged as the financial capital of the country or anything else. It was just the administrative capital. So we'll find something similar to here. So people who seem to think that this will be a panacea for Jakarta's traffic congestion will be sadly disappointed, because it will not leave a humongous change in the population of Jakarta, even when Nusantara is reasonably functional with most agencies already in situ. Jakarta will continue to function as the commercial nervous center of the country.